Yo, what is going on, you guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over, will Tom Holland have any more Spider-Man appearances after Spider-Man 3 in the MCU, or the next crossover movie that he'll be appearing in? But before we get into my thoughts on the subject and the discussion, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you do enjoy all types of Spider-Man daily content, which includes news, theories, and fan fictions. And with that being said, let's get straight into today's video. Spider-Man in the MCU has already had two movies, Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. But in November of 2021, the third Spider-Man movie will be releasing. Yesterday I made a video speaking on my thoughts about whether I think the trailer for the upcoming movie will be released next year or this year, and everything you really need to know about the film up until this point. However, I got asked in the comments a few times if there will be a fourth Spider-Man film in the MCU. Out of all of the famous three incarnations of Spider-Man, the closest we got to a fourth Spider-Man film was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4, which was meant to be released in May of 2011, but was canned for the Amazing Spider-Man duology. So let's start somewhere. The first question is it common for the MCU movies to have more than 3 movies? Well, it's very common for MCU characters to have more than 3 appearances. It's not common, and up to this point, no single character in the MCU has had more than 3 solo outings. However, the first to change that trend will be Thor in Thor Love and Thunder. However, this movie is predicted to be a passing of the torch movie, where Natalie Portman's Jane Foster is predicted to take the mantle of Thor in that movie, similar to the comic books. So whether you could count this as being a solo Thor film where Chris Hemsworth is the main character is a different question. However, the film still carries the Thor name, so maybe there is a possibility. The next thing we also have to take into account is the fact that Sony are the ones who are funding and making these movies predominantly. If Tom Holland and the rest of the cast of the Spider-Man movies agree to a contract, if Sony wanted to make more Spider-Man films, I'm sure there would be one, if it was in the MCU or not. Which brings me on to my next point, which is probably the biggest talking point up for debate when it comes to this topic, which is the contract between Sony and Disney about Spider-Man appearing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Sony and Disney, after a little disagreement a couple of months back, have finally come to a contractual agreement that allows Spider-Man 2 more appearances inside of the MCU, once more for a solo third Spider-Man film and a crossover film like Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame, a style of movie which allows him to appear with other heroes. Now the question is, with Sony setting up the Venomverse, which now also includes Morbius, and it looks like it's closely tied with the MCU and the amount of positive reception Into the Spider-Verse received, do Sony really need Marvel and Disney anymore? The only reason they collaborated by putting Spider-Man in the MCU in the first place was because after The Amazing Spider-Man 2 flopped and the firing of Andrew Garfield, Sony were backed into a corner and needed an escape plan, and having Spider-Man in the MCU saved them financially. In fact, it gave them their most profitable Spider-Man movie ever made with Spider-Man Far From Home, which was also the first Spider-Man movie to clock $1 billion at the box office. With the profits and good reception Spider-Man has been getting recently, does Sony still need Disney? I think personally no. Disney certainly don't need Sony, as they already have all the MCU assets. So if Sony want to let go of the contract after these next 2 movies and appearances, then Disney probably won't fight for Spider-Man back unless they are that unconfident that their new characters like Black Panther, Doctor Strange, etc. can't lead the way through Marvel Phase 4, and they really need Spider-Man to boost that Phase 4 up. However, despite this, I still think that we will get Spider-Man 4. You see, Sony are still setting up this little pocket universe that leeches off of the MCU with Venom and Morbius. And now that we have evidence that these 2 universes are connected through the Morbius trailer and Michael Keaton as Vulture showing up, if Sony pulls Spider-Man from the MCU contractually, it doesn't actually mean that he will leave the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Sony is setting up a little pocket dimension where it seems that MCU characters can cross over into there, like the Vulture, but it seems that the MCU doesn't really acknowledge Sony as such. So then if Spider-Man was out of a contract and Sony still wanted to make Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland's Spider-Man, he would move over to the little Sony pocket in with Venom and Morbius, except his movies would be completely solo now and wouldn't involve any MCU characters like previously before. The only difference that this would make is that Spider-Man wouldn't be able to cross over with the Avengers anymore, and MCU characters wouldn't be able to cross over with Spider-Man. However, if this did ever happen and some big astronomical event takes place on either side of the coin, for example, if say Galactus or someone of the same caliber showed up in the MCU, it would get confusing to why say Spider-Man wouldn't show up in the Avengers, or if say something really big happened in a Spider-Man movie and none of the Avengers showed up in there as well. It would just get really confusing to why the Avengers or Spider-Man wouldn't acknowledge each other. But anyway, I do think that we'll get a Spider-Man 4. It looks very likely that with Tom Holland still being almost 10 years younger at this point in his Spidey career than Tobey and Andrew were when they first filmed their first movie, it suggests to me that we'll be seeing Tom either in the MCU for a 4th film, or maybe a brand new trilogy trilogy, or he'll be out of the MCU and Sony's little pocket universe where he'll still be utilized and have more films. Another thing to acknowledge is that we'll still get Spider-Man movies no matter what, because the contract that allows Sony to own Spider-Man means that Sony have to produce a Spider-Man movie every 3 or 4 years or something of that range, or at least they have some kind of development that is Spider-Man and they have to produce it in a certain amount of time. Don't quote me on that, but I could be wrong. But if this means that if Sony just stop making Spider-Man movies, then the rights automatically revert back to Marvel if Sony don't make something Spider-Man within a certain amount of time. I think it's about 3 or 4 years. It could be longer. I don't really know. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the contractual agreement that Sony and Marvel have. And that goes back way before Disney bought Marvel as well. This goes back before Sam Raimi's Spider-Man as well. Either way, we'll certainly get more Spider-Man movies, and we'll certainly almost get a Spider-Man 4. With that being said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that we'll get a Spider-Man 4 or do you not? With that being said, thank you all for watching. If you do enjoy all types of Spider-Man content from news theories and fan fictions, make sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell next to the subscribe button to not miss any more content. And with that being said, thank you all for watching. Once again, I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.